At 16, I fell into the water and blackmailed the heir to the Duke's mansion into marriage, becoming the laughingstock of the entire capital. No one believed it was my younger sister who pushed me in. Not even my husband. In this lifetime with Gu Zhaoang, I lived cautiously, burdened by guilt. Even later, when he treated me well and secured me a noble title, I knew he still harbored resentment toward me. When I awoke again, I found myself back at the edge of the emerald pool, where my younger half-sister attempted the same trick. This time, however, she chose to leap into the water herself. A gentle breeze rippled the green waves as Gu Zhaoang's small boat glided onto the water as scheduled. Hearing cries for help, he rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward. But just before diving in, our eyes locked across the shore. In that instant, the young master staggered, pulling his foot back. The tale says those who die with unfulfilled wishes carry heavy resentment, earning rebirth. I couldn't understand. In my past life, I lived a life of simplicity and few desires. Why would heaven make me endure this again? Until I saw my younger half-sister before me, everything suddenly became clear. I was dragged here by her. Sister, you were born the apple of your mother's eye. Your legitimate mother dotes on you like the pupil of her eye. How could you possibly understand my suffering? Tears glistened in Zhu Jinxin's eyes, yet her expression was strangely joyful. But after today, everything will change. With that, she plunged into the water before I could react. Wait, I scrambled to the edge, but my hand froze upon touching the water, jerking me back. That bone-piercing chill, like needles of ice, I will never forget. In my past life, it was also this early spring month of March, when warmth teased only to retreat. Zhu Jinxin pushed me into the pool. Then, I lifted my gaze and saw a small boat gliding out from behind the trees. Standing tall and graceful upon it was none other than the distinguished and handsome heir to the Duke of Dingwa, my former husband, Gu Zhaoang. Wow, such a young Gu Zhaoang. I murmured in a daze. He rolled up his sleeves with a decisive flick of his wrist. His gaze fixed on the struggling figure in the water, his long brows furrowed. He seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to jump in and save her. Today's banquet was arranged by the Duchess of Dingwa under the guise of a flower-viewing gathering, a matchmaking event for him. Unable to bear the commotion, Gu Zhaoang had secretly slipped away to the water. Yet, fate had him encounter a noble lady drowning. The Gu family of the Duke of Ding had a strict house rule against taking concubines. If he saved this girl, he would have to preserve her virtue and bring her into the household as his legitimate wife. That was precisely the fate I had endured in my past life. So, in this life, Gu Zhaoang was going to become Zhu Jinxin's husband? My mind went blank, as if a wildly strung instrument had suddenly snapped. As if sensing a burning gaze, Gu Zhaoang abruptly turned his face, looking toward the shore. Our eyes locked directly. I had no time to look away, and we stared at each other like that for a long moment. Then, in an instant, Gu Zhaoang's body swayed, and he pulled his foot back. Though I didn't understand why. But I was actually somewhat relieved that Gu Zhaoang hadn't saved Zhu Jinxin. It wasn't because I particularly liked him. I simply didn't want him to be manipulated again, sacrificing his entire life in the process. In my previous life, I entered the water wearing white. When Gu Zhaoang pulled me ashore, our clothes were soaked through, mine even revealing my undergarments completely. Even within the grounds of his Duke of Dingwa mansion, no secret stays hidden forever. The next day, rumors swirled throughout the capital. All mocked my audacity, a mere daughter of a lowly imperial censor, madly obsessed with climbing the social ladder. I'd resorted to such a despicable trick as a false marriage claim to force the Gu heir to wed me. When father heard the rumors, he was so enraged he couldn't eat for days, confining me to the ancestral hall. My younger half-sister, Zhu Jinxin, came specifically to sneer, "Sister, you're truly fortunate. That boat was meant for Prince Ji, yet somehow it became Gu's heir." Prince Ji, past 50, was notoriously arrogant, extravagant, and licentious, a man the capital's noble ladies shunned like poisonous snakes. Zhu Jinxin intended for me to be rescued by him, my reputation ruined, and forced into becoming his concubine. Well, even if I were the legitimate daughter, the Duke of Dingwa's household would surely look down upon our humble origins. Father values honor so deeply, I wonder how he will deal with me? My face was deathly pale, all strength to argue gone. In my heart, I prepared for the worst. The Zhu family may not match the Duke's household in prestige, but generations of officials have earned us a reputation for integrity. Even if my parents cherish me deeply, they cannot tolerate me bringing shame upon our family. Finally, after 7 days of kneeling, father came to see me. He brought a length of white silk, his voice choked with emotion. Meower, regardless of the truth, this is the Zhu family's only way out for you. In this world, a woman's virtue is judged with particular harshness. I understood my father's predicament and accepted the silk with a heavy heart. Yet on the very day I attempted to hang myself, my mother burst into the dark chamber and saved me. Overcome with joy, she wept as she announced, Prince Gu has come to propose marriage. I am deeply grateful to Gu Zhaoang. Truthfully, he could have disregarded my life or death, treating this affair as a mere romantic escapade. Yet not only did he marry me, he also upheld his family's code, remaining faithful to me alone as his sole wife for life. In the early days of our marriage, Gu Zhaoang was taciturn and distant toward me. Before 3 months had passed, he requested to leave the capital and headed south to suppress bandits. Meanwhile, I lived in the Duke's mansion, tiptoeing through life like walking on thin ice. It wasn't until he returned to the capital to inherit his title that I became the duchess, taking charge of household affairs. Only then did our relationship shed its awkwardness, becoming barely harmonious. As the saying goes, a day as husband and wife brings 100 days of affection. Gu Zhaoang and I muddled through a lifetime as husband and wife. I couldn't say I harbored deep affection for him. If pressed, I'd say it was more guilt and respect. Gu Zhaoang was an exemplary gentleman of the highest integrity. I remember at the end of my life in my previous existence, he held my hand and said, Jin Miao, you've endured so much. The Duke's household is blessed to have you. Ah, he was clearly caught up in my younger sister's plot against me. He saved my life, preserved my honor, and sacrificed his own marriage prospects. Yet in the end, he actually thanked me? This leaves me unable to rest in peace even in death. But thankfully, in this life, Gu Zhaoang need not be forced to marry anyone else. Inside the ancestral hall, Zhu Jinxi knelt on the floor, weeping until she nearly fainted. It was sister who pushed me into the water. Sini was murdered. Father, you must believe Sini. Father held his breath, continuing to shout angrily, still talking nonsense. If your sister hadn't called the maidservant to save you in time, you would have brought utter disgrace upon the Zhu family. And now you dare to slander your sister. You shall kneel in the ancestral hall for 7 days, then spend 3 months at the country estate to reflect on your actions. With that, he ignored Zhu Jinxin's pleas and stormed out. I entered the room afterward, gazing silently at the figure on the floor. Zhu Jinxin noticed me and let out a cold laugh. Sister, you needn't come rushing over to watch my humiliation. If not for your meddling, Prince Gu would have saved me and married me as his consort. I felt she was beyond redemption, responding only with a cold tone, a marriage forced upon anyone benefits no one. What's wrong with that? Zhu Jinxin lifted her gaze, her eyes mocking as she swept me with a glance. Marrying Prince Gu wouldn't just spare me the rivalry of concubines vying for favor. Once I became the Duchess of Dinghua, I'd be granted an imperial decree of honor, sitting atop glory and wealth. Before she could finish, I struck her hard across the face. What's wrong with it? Everything is wrong with it. The undisguised disgust of the capital's noble ladies. The frivolous teasing of aristocratic youths. The contemptuous indifference of the household servants. And all those decades, every fleeting shadow of unease in Gu Zhaoang's gaze made my heart race, left me ashamed to show my face. My nightmarish past, in her eyes, it was somehow worthy of such envy. Petty and shameless. With such a venomous heart, you don't deserve him. The solemn silence of the ancestral hall carried my words clearly to her ears. After a brief pause, Zhu Jinxin lunged at me with sudden fury. But her legs, already weakened from kneeling, buckled again, and she collapsed to the floor in a heap. Her curses poured forth, Zhu Jin Miao. Why can you do it, but I can't? Don't gloat too soon. If we start over, I won't believe I can't beat you. Do you really think Gu Zhaoang truly loves you? A man as cold and arrogant as him? He could marry anyone. Don't overestimate yourself. Her mind was clouded, completely out of control. I pretended not to understand her words. Slowly, I stepped out of the ancestral hall, locking her shrill voice behind the door. Ah, yes. It suddenly occurred to me, Zhu Jinxin had always been infatuated with Gu Zhaoang. In my past life, it was she who personally pushed me into the arms of her beloved. Yet she herself dragged things out until nearly 30, only to hastily marry some lowly scholar. No wonder her obsession ran so deep. Because of Zhu Jinxin's incident, I too had to lie low. My family temporarily put my marriage arrangements on hold. But barely a few days passed before someone came calling at the mansion, inviting me to watch the tide at Wangchuan Tower. Mother agreed on my behalf without hesitation. Ning Erling is handsome and talented, and he's utterly devoted to you. You should seriously consider it. I pondered for a long while before recalling such a person. Ning Erling, in my past life, he was Mother's ideal match, and our interests aligned perfectly. Had Zhu Jinxin not schemed against us, perhaps he and I. What was I thinking? A large hand waved before my eyes, snapping me out of my reverie. I gave an awkward smile. Fumbling for words beside the man, I stammered, who would have thought the top floor of Wangchuan Tower offered such splendid views? Ning Erling chuckled. Is this your first time on the top floor, Sister Meower? I froze. Sister Meower? Were we ever that close? As I pondered, he continued, this annual spectacle draws crowds vying for these private rooms. I went to great lengths to secure one, just to share this view with you. Noticing the hint of innuendo in his words, I quickly changed the subject, pointing down at the crowd below. They're about to announce the results. Let's go see. Earlier, while idle, the crowd had been joking about selecting the most handsome man in the capital. Ning Erling's eyes flickered slightly as he hesitated before asking, Meower, do you have a favorite candidate in mind? I froze again. In my past life, I lived to see my hair turn silver, having met thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people. How could I possibly remember which handsome men were in the capital at this very moment? Inspiration struck, and I seized the opportunity to respond, young Master Ning is quite extraordinary. As the words left my lips, Ning Erling's cheeks flushed crimson, though he forced himself to remain composed, stammering as he pressed, compared to the first-place winner? Naturally, there is room for improvement. I continued smoothly, afraid he might catch on, my smile thick with flattery. But before the smile could fully form, it froze on my face. For just a few steps away, at the entrance to the private room, stood Gu Zhaoang's clear, handsome, and cold face. Ning Erling spotted him too and hurried forward to bow. How fortuitous! When did your highness arrive, Prince Gu? Why not join us for a cup of tea? I was here just moments before Ning Erling. Gu Zhaoyang glanced at me with unruffled composure, his expression and tone utterly placid. I saw you conversing so pleasantly with this lovely lady and didn't wish to interrupt. Ning Erling blushed and waved his hands repeatedly. Your Highness, please don't tease me. First, I must congratulate you, you've claimed the title of the capital's most handsome man once again. Truly well deserved. A faint smile tugged at Gu Zhaoang's lips, yet it didn't reach his eyes. Ning, you flatter me. I'm too vulgar to deserve such praise. His words were vague, carrying hidden meaning. Yet even a 3-year-old child could see his complexion had visibly darkened. The atmosphere grew tense. I stood by with lowered eyes, not daring to breathe loudly. Only after Gu Zhaoang departed did I relax slightly. No. I am currently unmarried, pure and untouched by any man. Why should I feel guilty? Even as I thought this, my heart remained anxious and uneasy until noon. After watching the tide and the play, we returned to the manor. The moment I stepped down from the carriage, a servant hurried over. He was both shocked and delighted, panting as he said, Miss, the Duke of Ding. The Duke of Ding's household has come to propose marriage. Learning that the Gu heir had sent someone to propose. The entire household was filled with joy and harmony. Except for me. Why? After racking my brain in confusion, I couldn't help but ask aloud. In this lifetime, I've only met Gu Zhaoang twice. We've never even exchanged a proper sentence. What could he possibly see in me? In the reception hall, the elderly lady of the Marquis's household, who had come to propose the match, took my hand with a beaming smile. My dear child, it's because they see your dignified grace and gentle, refined nature. The lady explained that sending her to propose was Gu Xiaowang's own decision. I'd feared that icy-hearted lad would drag out the marriage arrangements forever. Unexpectedly, he's the type to get things done quietly. Ignoring my parents' warning glances, I pressed further. Did the young master have anything else to say? Yes, yes. The attendant hurried to add. I recognized him as the capable steward who later served Gu Xiaowang. This man was quick-witted. The crown prince remarked that at the flower banquet, he saw you save someone without flinching, a sign of great composure. Earlier, passing by the money house, he heard people praise your skill in bookkeeping and managing accounts, a true talent for stewardship. Later, while sipping tea with others, he learned of your monthly charity at the city gates. You never miss a single time, truly a heart of compassion unmatched in the capital. Moreover, this very morning, the crown prince encountered you again at the Wangchuan pavilion. Truly, this is profound destiny, a sign from the heavens. So that's how it is. Gu Xiaoyang believes my composure means I'd be capable of managing affairs as his crown prince consort. My skill in household management suggests I could handle the vast affairs of the duke's residence, easing his burdens. Officials' families value virtue, and my reputation adds luster to the duke's household. Truthfully, he doesn't need me specifically. It's just that I happen to meet his criteria for a crown prince consort. Unexpectedly, I recalled Zhu Jinxin's words, Gu Xiaowang could marry anyone. I must admit, those words became a thorn in my heart. In my past life, consumed by guilt and shame, I devoted my entire existence to the duke's household. Though later blessed with wealth and honor, I never raised my head, never dared to truly open my heart. I never tasted the sweetness of a harmonious marriage, where husband and wife respect each other and their hearts resonate as one. It is only human to yearn for youthful love. Given another chance at life, I only wish to find someone who truly loves me. To fully experience days filled with care and cherishing. With this thought, I drew a deep breath and declared resolutely, please return and convey to your young master that I am not as good as he claims. I fear I would only disappoint his kind intentions. At these words, every present brow furrowed, and silence hung heavy for a long while. After a long pause, the old lady spoke first. What the eldest lady means is. I smiled faintly and nodded, rising to curtsy gracefully. Thank you for your kind misapprehension, madam. Jin Miao will not marry. The dusk was deepening. Within the Dingwa Duke's mansion, the lamps had just been lit. Gu Xiaoyang sat upright at his desk, making a few marks in a book. It matched again. Since his rebirth, he had immediately begun meticulously recording every event he had experienced before. As expected, everything unfolded exactly as it had in his previous life. Except for one detail. The person who had fallen into the water at that flower banquet long ago was not Zhu Jinmiao. Gu Xiaowang had always been precise and meticulous, brooking no error. Even in this second life, he never intended to alter anything. He only wished to proceed step by step, ensuring all matters went smoothly, avoiding any complications. Yet that day, for the first time, he made a choice different from before. He did not jump in to save her. In the moment their gazes met, countless thoughts flashed through Gu Xiaowang's mind. The one that lingered longest was, did it matter that Zhu Jinmiao wasn't his wife? Gu Xiaowang had never considered this possibility, and for a moment, he was stumped by his own question. By the time he regained his composure, the drowning person had already been pulled ashore. Somehow, he felt an inexplicable sense of relief. That night, he added a line in red ink to his notebook, marry Zhu Jinmiao. She was the one in his past life, she must be the one in this life too. Otherwise, everything would veer off course. Gu Xiaowang dared to assert that in the entire capital, no. Under heaven, there could be no second woman as perfect a mistress of the house as Zhu Jinmiao. For decades, she had been as steady as a lake. Calmly embracing all the complexities and trivialities. Simply being near her brought a sense of peace. Gu Xiaowang was equally certain that the future Dingwa Duke's residence could not do without Zhu Jinmiao. But Zhu Jinmiao seemed to think otherwise. Amidst the bustling crowds at Wangchuan Pavilion, she was openly conversing and laughing with a man in a private room. What nonsense about dear Miao Miao. What nonsense about the distinguished young master Ning. Such sickeningly sweet drivel, utterly disgraceful. Gu Xiaoyang suppressed the urge to crush his fist, went to see her, and then sought news of that Ning heir. Was Lady Zhu pleased with him? The attendant nodded. Gu Xiaoyang gritted his teeth and immediately wrote a marriage proposal note, handing it over. The man was startled. Such a momentous matter as proposing marriage, shouldn't the young master consult with the Duke and Lady Zhu first? It's unnecessary. Gu Xiaoyang couldn't afford to wait any longer. Further delay would only lead to greater mistakes. Only by swiftly securing Zhu Jinmiao by his side could he find peace of mind. The Zhu household surely wouldn't refuse such a favorable match. His own elders weren't narrow-minded types, acting first and reporting later was perfectly acceptable. By the time the attendant returned to the mansion, dusk was falling. The moment Gu Xiaoyang heard footsteps approaching the study, he calmly picked up his brush, ready to erase that line of Zhu's writing. Yet, the report left him stunned for a long moment. Perhaps I misheard. Gu Xiaoyang tugged at the corner of his mouth, finding it hard to believe. After a moment, he suppressed his smile and said in a deep voice, "Repeat that." The attendant looked troubled, staring at his master's ashen face, feeling like crying but unable to. "Your Highness." He repeated the words again, his voice trembling. "Miss Zhu said. She won't marry you. Father and mother are both displeased with me." That was a marriage proposal from the Duke of Dinghua's household. They even invited the Dowager of the Marquisate, a first-rank noblewoman. How could you refuse them outright without giving a reason? How will you explain this refusal when people ask about it later? I regret my own rash words. When the old lady left, the smile vanished from her face. She was clearly harboring resentment. But I couldn't very well say I'd already married Gu Xiaoyang, could I? Forget it. If I can't stand up to them, surely I can avoid them? Turns out I couldn't avoid them after all. Many noble ladies in the capital practiced Buddhism, often hosting memorial banquets and inviting guests to join the festivities. As usual, the invitation from the Wen household arrived at my residence. The Wen and Zhu families had always maintained friendly relations. Thus, knowing full well I was walking into a den of wolves and tigers, I steeled myself to attend the banquet. Beneath the eaves of the pavilion, a group of unfamiliar young ladies covered their mouths and snickered at me. Look, there she is, the Zhu family's goddess who rejected Prince Gu. I don't see what all the fuss is about. She looks rather petty. Someone like that wouldn't even glance at the Duke of Dinghua's mansion? Could she have overplayed her hand and backfired? Yeah. Don't be fooled by her calm demeanor, she's probably regretting it bitterly inside. Facing their taunts and barbs, I remained absorbed in the quince blossom in my hand, paying them no mind. This world is inherently unfair to women. Even if I had accepted this match, they would still be mocking me today. Just as now, whatever reaction I showed, I would still be targeted. Lost in thought, I suddenly felt someone brush past me, leaning in with perfect precision. The weight nearly toppled me. Though I remained upright, the quince branch in my hand snapped underfoot. I glared up at the mocking woman, a surge of anger rising in my chest. Before leaving home, Mother specifically warned me to watch my words and actions, to avoid quarrels with others. But constant endurance only invites greater contempt. So, feigning dizziness, I leaned into her, using the momentum to push her to the ground. Ah, since you're so delicate, sister, you'd be better off returning home to rest. You wouldn't want to pass your illness on to others. If you're unsure what medicine to take, feel free to ask your younger sister. You. The woman, enraged, tried to rise and grab me. Suddenly, a deep, cool voice sounded nearby, halting her movement. Miss Zhu. I followed the sound with my gaze. Seeing that tall figure silhouetted against the light, I suddenly felt dazed. Gu Xiaoyang wore a royal blue, wide-sleeved robe today. The fabric, the cut, the patterns. All were identical to the one I had custom-made for him in my past life. He had worn it for his 40th birthday celebration. When I saw it, I couldn't help but compliment how handsome it looked on him. How? Could this be such a coincidence? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Gu Xiaoyang walked through the garden and stopped 3 feet away. Madam Wen knows you adore begonia. She specifically asked me to inform you that many more have been planted in the rear courtyard. I understood immediately. With so many maids and matrons at the Wen residence, why would they need to send the young master himself to deliver this message? Gu Zhaoang had come to rescue me. My heart warmed. I lowered my eyes and bowed to him, preparing to express my gratitude. But whether it was the recent turmoil clouding my mind, or that sapphire blue robe being too dazzlingly striking, I found myself staring fixedly at the pattern on his robe's hem and blurted out, "Thank you, my lord." Gu Zhaoang faltered. Misfortune never comes alone. The storm of rejecting the match hadn't yet subsided when my own tongue landed me in another mess. For several nights in a row, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. That day, had Gu Zhaoang truly heard my words? If he had, why hadn't he asked anything? If he hadn't heard me clearly, then what was that ambiguous smile on his face? And how should I interpret the items he'd recently slipped to me through the pretended hands of the old lady of the Marquis's mansion? The coral bead necklace, the white jade guanine pendant, the gold-threaded brocade. All were gifts he'd given me in my previous life. Even the jade ring his late grandmother had prepared for his wedding was among them. In our past life, it wasn't until 2 years after our marriage, when our relationship had slightly eased, that he finally handed this to me. Now, he could casually give it away as if it were an ordinary trinket? Piecing together all these recent events, an unbelievable thought began to take root in my mind. I dared not dwell on it further. After several days of brooding in my room, beating my chest and stamping my feet, Mother could no longer bear to watch. "If you're truly distressed, why not let your father and I decide? We'll arrange a marriage with the Ning family. That way, even if he, the Duke of Dinghua, holds high rank and power, he couldn't interfere and ruin a marriage." I shook my head helplessly, unsure how to begin. I could only soothe Mother, see her off, and retire early. Early summer, stars blazed bright, insects chirped and crickets leaped. Midnight. I tossed and turned on my bed. Suddenly, I noticed the window was slightly ajar. The evening breeze stirred it. Gradually, it outlined a familiar dark silhouette. When I recognized it, my throat caught in shock. I pinched my palm hard to confirm this wasn't a dream. Outside the window, Gu Zhaoang stood cloaked in dark, form-fitting attire. He blocked most of the moonlight spilling into the room. Cast aside all etiquette, he seized my wrist the moment I approached the window, pulling me close against his chest. "Madam, are you truly going to marry that Ning Zhuiyuan?" Gu Zhaoang must have come in a rush, still carrying the coolness of the night dew. His forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat, and he was breathing slightly heavily. We were no more than a fist's distance apart. Staring into those ink-black eyes, I suddenly couldn't tell which lifetime I was in. A moment of bewilderment. Gu Zhaoang had already regained his composure. Realizing my shock, he released his grip, rubbed his temples in frustration, and apologized, "I'm sorry. I acted impulsively and frightened you." I pondered for a long moment, lowered my eyes, and shook my head. Why ask that? He had already addressed me as Madam. The question that had troubled me for days now had its answer. Gu Zhaoang, understanding the unspoken, avoided mentioning Rebirth and confessed honestly, "I bribed the new maid in your courtyard." I recalled that 12 or 13-year-old girl. When my mother came during the day, she had just broken a teacup at the door. It must have been then she overheard, mistakenly believing I'd agreed to my mother's proposal and misreported the news. "Your Highness, please be cautious in your words. My marriage has yet to be settled." I took a step back with a startled laugh, pulling the man's presence away. "If your Highness has no further questions, please leave. Jin Miao will pretend she never saw you tonight." No sooner had the words left my lips than the man's hoarse voice followed, thick with sorrow. "I do." Gu Zhaoang stared deeply at me, his gaze seeming to pierce right through me. "Why did you say you wouldn't marry me?" The words were too direct. They struck me like a blow to the head, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. Gu Zhaoang gave me no time to recover, pouring out his words in one breath. "Next year, your mother-in-law will fall gravely ill. She will need the cold mountain snow mushroom to survive. Without the bond of marriage, the elders of our clan would never readily part with such a medicine. 3 years later, your father-in-law will be wrongfully imprisoned. If you are not my wife, neither I nor my father will have the standing to plead his case." Moonlight streamed like a ribbon, illuminating the gleam in his eyes. He recounted every detail of our past life, as if listing treasured possessions. Finally, he added, 13 years later, on the outskirts of the capital, you nearly fell into bandits' hands. Gu Zhaoyang paused, his voice thick with emotion. How could I protect you if I weren't by your side? His deep concern for my safety, his constant remembrance of the past, moved me profoundly. I bowed slightly, offering comfort. Thank you, Your Highness. With your warning, Jin Miao will certainly take precautions and avoid danger. But I won't avoid it. Gu Zhaoyang pressed his lips together, looking somewhat aggrieved. My father and I often clash. Without you to mediate, our relationship would only grow more strained in this lifetime. Every time I return from the barracks, I struggle to sleep. Without the incense you blend, I fear I'd toss and turn all night. And then, after a string of petulant words, he pointed to his shoulder. Soon I'll head south to suppress bandits. A bullet will nearly pierce this spot. When it happens, blood will pour like a river. Even after healing, it'll flare up often, the pain unbearable. Without you applying medicine night after night, I wouldn't have survived. I fell silent. In 2 lifetimes, I'd never seen Gu Zhaoyang like this. It was sheer unreasonable tantrum. But recalling how he'd been near death from that wound, I suppressed the bitterness in my heart, averted my gaze, and fought to remain unshaken. What the Crown Prince says, anyone could do. It doesn't have to be me. But I only want you. I don't want anyone else. The night wind carried his words clearly to my ears, stirring a faint tingling that burrowed deep into my heart. After a moment, Gu Zhaoyang raised his hand as if to grasp something, yet let it fall midair. Jin Miao. He suddenly called my name, his voice faintly choked with emotion. Or are you truly enamored with that Ningzhui Yuan? This is getting more and more absurd. I sighed helplessly. The Crown Prince is probably just accustomed to having me by his side. In my past life, the Crown Prince bestowed great kindness upon me. Whatever I do for you is only right, no need to dwell on it. But in this life, I clearly intended to decline gracefully. Yet somehow, gazing at Gu Zhaoyang's face, an inexplicable urge to pour out my heart surged within me. Jin Miao believed the debt of gratitude to the Crown Prince had been settled. This life sought no destination, only a pure heart like jade. Having shared a lifetime as husband and wife with Gu Zhaoyang, we'd experienced every intimacy. Still, my face burned fiercely as I spoke these words to him. A pure heart like jade. Gu Zhaoyang murmured my words back. After a moment, as if something occurred to him, his expression softened, and a smile rippled in his eyes. Before he could speak further, a maid's voice suddenly called from outside the main gate. Young mistress, have you awakened? Light footsteps hurried toward us. I instinctively nudged Gu Zhaoyang's chest. Hurry, go. Don't let anyone find us. Yet he stood smiling, leaning against the windowsill, his brows unfurled as he spoke softly. I know what the lady desires. Jin Miao, wait for me. A gust of wind swept in, slamming the window shut. The maid promptly approached with a lamp, her voice filled with surprise. Why is your face so flushed, young lady? Could you have caught a chill? My heart pounded like thunder, but I forced myself to remain calm. Nothing. Just a dream. Gu Zhaoyang told me to wait, but never said how long. After that night, he never showed his face again. Only his personal attendant climbed the wall daily to deliver things. Nothing precious, just my usual items. It felt like he was deliberately catering to my tastes. The young master had long prepared the recipe for Wangchuan Pavilion to make, saying the young lady would surely love this pastry. This day, the attendant dutifully presented a plate of jade confidence pastries. I glanced at them, swallowing hard. I'd long known Gu Zhaoyang had a sharp memory, but I never imagined he could recall even the smallest details with such flawless precision. Jade letter pastries were my favorite treat in my previous life. They wouldn't even exist for another decade or so, yet Gu Zhaoyang had them made ahead of time. One could endure hardship in many ways, but never at the expense of one's palate. After days of hesitation, I sheepishly accepted this first gift and finally couldn't resist asking, "Where is your young master?" The attendant's eyes lit up, revealing a look of immense relief. You finally asked, young lady. Our young master has journeyed south. To suppress bandits? He shook his head. I know not, young lady. The young master only said to assure you when you inquired. My heart lurched. Calculating the timing, the calamity in the south hadn't yet unfolded. What schemes was Gu Zhaoang plotting on this trip? Recalling the wounds on his shoulder, my heart pounded restlessly, finding no peace. Days passed at a leisurely pace over the next month or so, and I gradually grew accustomed to the attendant's presence. Lately, I'd even found myself gazing expectantly at the wall each day, waiting for him to bring news of the traveling troupe. He mentioned that Gu Zhaoang had left him a strange book, one that seemed to predict events with uncanny accuracy. The troupe's arrival date in the capital and the plays they would perform had been written months in advance. Young lady, don't you think our young master is like a god? I smiled without answering. This was Gu Zhaoang's favorite troupe, so naturally he remembered it well. In my past life, I too had fallen in love with opera through his influence. Unfortunately, it was too late then, many of the early plays were no longer performed. Now I must seize the opportunity to watch to my heart's content. I went out almost every day, lingering at the theater from dawn till dusk, utterly content. Mother saw my renewed spirit and felt comforted, no longer pressing me about marriage. The only thing that troubled me was Zhu Jinxin's return. Her confinement ended, yet resentment still lingered in her heart. Whenever she saw me, she'd make a point to snide-sneer a few remarks. Today, she stopped me again. Sister, you truly came for the play? I suspect your true intentions lie elsewhere. Perhaps you wish to see someone? Alas, if the world always granted your every wish, would there be any room left for a younger sister? I'd grown accustomed to such remarks, paying them little mind and offering her not a single glance. We'd just entered the theater's private box when the performance began. The long-haired attendant burst in cheerfully, Miss. Our young master has returned. He's hurrying this way to surprise you. I must rush back to fetch him proper attire. I shot him a reproachful glare. Once he was out of sight, I absent-mindedly smoothed my hair. A strange sensation welled up inside me, as if time itself had slowed. I waited, unsure how long, until a knock sounded at the door. I hurriedly rose to open it. But the figure before me wasn't Gu Zhaoang. Instead, it was the Prince of Ji, reeking of alcohol and clearly intoxicated. He eyed me up and down. Truly a striking beauty. I glanced around. His bulky frame blocked the doorway completely, leaving me no escape. Don't run. Don't run. Prince Ji inched closer. Behind him, the door creaked shut. Zhu Jinxin stood by the door, giggling sweetly. Sister, enjoy yourself. Little sister will keep watch. Downstairs, the spectacle began, drums beating, gongs clanging, voices singing loudly. My cries for help were utterly drowned out. When Gu Zhaoang burst into the private room, he saw a man and a woman in an intimate embrace on the floor. Without hesitation, he drew his sword. One swift thrust pierced Prince Ji's body cleanly, not a single drop of blood spilled. Jin Miao. Jin Miao. He murmured her name, his voice trembling with panic. He shed his cloak, intending to drape it over the disheveled woman. But when he saw her face, his body froze in shock. At that moment, I peered out from behind the screen. My voice soft and steady, I addressed Gu Zhaoang, whose eyes were bloodshot. I'm here. I've lived 2 lifetimes, after all. Faced with such a situation, I certainly wouldn't panic like some young girl. The Prince of Ji was already dead drunk. Plus, he wasn't very tall. I simply grabbed something and smacked him on the back of the head, knocking him unconscious. The door outside was locked. Fearing he might wake again, I hid behind the screen. Inside the warm chamber, I explained to Gu Zhaoang. He brought me to a residence under the Duke's estate, insisting I rest properly. I refused repeatedly, but couldn't dissuade him. Perhaps my younger sister couldn't hear the commotion inside, so she came to peek. Just then, the Prince of Ji woke up and dragged her away. Zhu Jinxin had calculated every possible outcome, yet never imagined retribution would fall upon her own head. I lowered my head to sip tea, stealing a glance at Gu Zhaoang before me. His expression remained dark and ominous. He'd been blaming himself since earlier. Zhu Jinxin had merely returned to this world, she hadn't grown any wiser. I spoke again, Your Highness, I truly am fine. Even if she hadn't entered, I would have found a way to escape. You are not fine, Gu Zhaoang insisted. I am. After all this time, he remained stubbornly unyielding, and I grew irritated. Gu Zhaoang remained silent. He rose and approached, kneeling before me. But Zhu Jinxiao, ever since I saw you, you've been trembling. He lowered his eyes, tentatively, slowly taking my hand. If you're afraid, you can tell me. Silence hung in the air for a moment. I met his clear gaze. Before I could speak, tears fell first. I didn't know how he saw through my thoughts. Caught off guard, I turned my face away. Your Highness, please don't speak in ways that invite misunderstanding. Gu Zhaoang's expression softened as he gently wiped the tears from my eyes. Let them misunderstand. For what you perceive as misunderstanding is my true heart. He tickled the palm of my hand with his fingertips, gesturing for me to look at him. Then, enunciating each word deliberately, he said, Zhu Jinniao, I am captivated by you. Though the timing is poor, though it may be too late, I must tell you. A moment of stunned silence. Gu Zhaoang handed me several notebooks. These were the to-do lists he'd recorded upon his rebirth. Page by page, I leafed through them, only then realizing. The Gu Zhaoang of my past life wasn't the indifferent man I'd imagined. The cold mountain snow fungus that saved my mother's life, not all elders of his clan agreed to part with it. Gu Zhaoang took it for me without permission, first acting then reporting, and was punished with family discipline for it. Several household servants who had always treated me with disrespect were dismissed by Gu Zhaoang's hand. I had always thought they had voluntarily retired to their hometowns. Furthermore, my later imperial decree of nobility was specifically petitioned by him, not granted by imperial decree as I had believed. My gaze slid over the densely packed script, pausing at a certain passage. I couldn't help but chuckle as I asked, why did you go to the Wangchuan Pavilion to beat someone on the 13th day of the 12th lunar month in the year of Zhechen? Gu Zhaoang's eyes flickered slightly as he studied my expression, speaking cautiously. On that day in my previous life, you returned from the Wangchuan Pavilion in a rather sour mood. Only after questioning your female attendant did I learn that someone there had brought up the incident of you falling into the water again. I nodded slightly, lost in thought. So, did that anger you, Your Highness? Of course. Gu Zhaoang's tone grew heavier, seemingly unaware he was squeezing my hand too tightly. I know you detest this topic. Every time it's brought up, you're troubled for a long while. Though I don't know the full truth, I understand that the arranged marriage wasn't your true wish. I was stunned. So that's how he saw it. All these years, I never dared ask how he truly felt about me. I simply assumed he accepted the situation and married me out of pity. I composed myself, feigning calm as I asked, Does Your Highness believe I was framed? Gu Zhaoang's breath caught, and he sighed softly. Jin Niao, I never wished to deceive you. Truthfully, at first I only sought to save your life, unconcerned with the truth. It was only through our time together that I came to understand your character. Alas, by then we had been married for years, and I found no way to broach the subject. Gu Zhaoang hung his head, recounting the past with evident frustration. As I listened, I watched his lightly trembling lashes, a faint ache stirring in my heart. So it wasn't just me who dared not open my heart. Gu Zhaoang felt the same. When we married, he was only 17. Having accompanied the army on campaigns since childhood, romantic love was utterly foreign to him. Bitter over being forced into this marriage through false accusations, I remained perpetually deferential and submissive toward him. I never revealed a shred of my true feelings. He naturally assumed my emotional distance stemmed from being married to him to preserve my reputation. He mistook my trepidation for resistance. And I interpreted his caution as disdain. From youthful spouses to gray-haired companions. We spent our days guarding against each other, testing each other's boundaries. Little did we know that from the very beginning, our refusal to address the misunderstandings between us had already sealed our fate, drifting apart. Jin Miao, I was foolish back then, blind to my own shortcomings, unable to give you the peace of mind you craved. I only thought of how much you had sacrificed, feeling indebted and wanting to repay you. Little did I know that was the very essence of caring, of affection. That night, after hearing you speak, I finally realized what you truly wanted wasn't fame, fortune, or wealth. it was someone who held you in their heart. Gu Zhaoang's gaze fell upon the scroll in my hands, and he gave a self-deprecating smile. I tell you this today not to claim credit. I only seek the right to stand by your side. If you deem me unworthy, I will strive to earn it. A pale moon hung on the horizon. The room was dim. Only Gu Zhaoyang's eyes shone like torches. Gu Zhaoyang did not press me for an answer. After that day, he threw himself into handling the case of Prince Ji. Though Prince Ji was of imperial blood, his daily conduct was utterly depraved. With multiple murder cases hanging over him, he had long been despised by the imperial court and scorned by all officials. Officials within the Ministry of Justice who were friendly with the Duke of Dinghua's household conveniently defined Gu Zhaoang's actions as a heroic act of bravery, sentencing him to merely a month's imprisonment. As for Zhu Jinxin, though she was portrayed as the victim in this case, Gu Zhaoang, knowing the truth, feared she might implicate me. He drugged her on the road to her estate outside the city. From then on, she could neither write nor speak. Gu Zhaoang, disgusted by his own disheveled appearance, refused to let me visit him in prison during his confinement. A month later, he forbade me from greeting him upon his release. He only sent his attendant to lead me to an inn to wait. There, I saw Gu Zhaoang dressed in splendid robes and a jeweled crown. Alongside him stood a couple cradling an infant. These are my cousins from a collateral branch of the family, Gu Zhaoang introduced. They are Yuer's parents. Noticing my dazed expression, he took my hand and led me to the woman. Gazing at the child's peaceful, sleeping face, my eyes grew hot. It truly was Yuer, the foster son Gu Zhaoang and I had in our past life. After I fell ill from drowning and suffered 2 miscarriages, Gu Zhaoang forbade me from bearing children. He found a child from a distant branch of the family for me to raise, silencing the clan's endless gossip. Yuer came to me when he was already over 3 years old. His parents had perished in bandit uprisings, and he himself had lost hearing in one ear due to an accident. So you journeyed south early to rescue Yuer before the chaos erupted? On the return carriage, I suddenly understood Gu Zhaoang's purpose. He nodded. In my past life, I had boasted I could resolve all your difficulties. But the one thing I was utterly powerless against was seeing Yuer wipe away tears in secret. I believe that even if you are not his mother in this life, witnessing him grow up healthy and safe would surely bring you even greater comfort. I couldn't help but shed tears again. Your Highness, thank you. How many times have you said thank you on this journey? Gu Zhaoang smiled helplessly, reaching out to hand me a fresh handkerchief. Is gratitude all you feel toward me? Hearing this, I lifted my eyelids and met the dullness in his eyes. I didn't take the handkerchief. Instead, I leaned forward, wrapped my arms around his neck, and buried my face against his chest. Just like every intimate embrace we'd shared before. Gu Zhaoang's body stiffened. He said nothing more, simply returned the embrace around my waist. Silence fell between us. He knew this was my answer. My wedding ceremony with Gu Zhaoyang in this life was far more lively than in my previous one. After the elaborate rituals, we returned to the bridal chamber. Exhausted in body and mind, I still instinctively moved to serve him tea and help him undress. Gu Zhaoyang frowned, stopping my gesture, and instead pulled me into his embrace. I'd long wanted to say, you needn't concern yourself with every little thing. Even if you didn't do them, I wouldn't despise you for it. I blinked. Then what do you want me to do? Gu Zhaoang pondered for a moment before his deep voice rumbled, I want you to smile at me more often. Don't always hide your smile when you see me, looking so solemn. I wish you'd get angry with me more often, even scolding me a bit wouldn't be bad. His face was flushed crimson, reeking of alcohol. I found it slightly amusing. Why not wish I'd cry more often? Gu Zhaoang's gaze flickered, regaining some clarity. He narrowed his eyes with amusement. If the lady is willing, that wouldn't be impossible either. Warmth radiated from the crimson candlelit canopy as the storm of passion had just subsided. Gu Zhaoang abruptly grabbed his clothes and flung open the curtain. I asked warily, what is it? I must have someone prepare medicine for the lady first. If this follows the pattern of my past life, your body tomorrow. Enough! I yanked him back forcefully and covered his mouth. You don't need to remember every detail so clearly. Gu Zhaoyang's past life, I never imagined I'd marry at 17. My family was deeply displeased with my decision. Especially my uncles. Rumors spread that the girl was a marriage swindler. Were you rushing to be the sucker? Her cunning nature would surely tarnish the Gu family's reputation once she entered our home. With such rumors circulating in the capital, if you marry her, your own reputation will surely suffer. Nothing but stubborn, narrow-minded fools. I argued back at each of them. Then, father had me punished with the family law. During those days confined to bed, I kept dreaming of rescuing that girl ashore. Her mouth was full of endless thanks. Yet in her eyes when she looked at me, there was only fear, no trace of shyness. My subordinates reported she'd been confined and forced to kneel for days. If this continued, she'd likely end her life with a white silk sash. Every time I thought of this, my heart was pierced by a dense, stabbing pain. Unable to bear it any longer, I sought help from Mother. She was always open-minded. Compassion is human nature, but you mustn't ruin your future for a moment of weakness. Are you truly certain? I am. I exhaled deeply. If she deceived me, I would accept it. Zhu Jinmiao was no easy partner. I knew it from our wedding day. She feared me too much. Simply sitting on the bed's edge made her jump in fright. Her body stiffened as she inched step by step toward the tea table. I rubbed my temples, my patience nearly spent. Since we're married, I never intended to treat you as a mere ornament. She nodded blankly and poured me another cup of wine. What else does the crown prince require? Just give the word. She didn't understand a word I was saying. In the early days of our marriage, the slightest sound from me would startle Zhu Jinmiao terribly. If we were in the same room, she'd inexplicably approach and say, "But the tea has grown cold? Shall I replace it for your highness?" The first time I saw her in this excessively deferential manner, I frowned in confusion. Why do you say that? She timidly lifted her eyes, glanced at me, then at the teacup in my hand, and said nothing more. Only then did I realize I'd placed the cup down a bit too loudly. I found it amusing, yet didn't know how to explain it to her. I feared that if I chose the wrong words or tone, she'd overthink it again, retreating behind the screen to wipe away tears in secret. I'd seen her cry secretly several times. Always after speaking with me. Heaven knows how baffled I was. Only after asking the old lady of the Ho household did I learn she might still be unfamiliar with me and was homesick. That was easy enough to fix. I volunteered to lead a southern campaign against bandits. Before departing, I specifically instructed her, if you miss home, just go back. Unexpectedly, her face paled slightly. She lowered her eyes submissively and murmured, "I dare not." I was baffled. Later, I learned that when speaking with Zhu Jinmiao, one must soften the tone and make the voice gentler. Only then would she not startle like a frightened rabbit. Yet I occasionally slipped up. Once, as we passed the opera house, I noticed her eyes darting toward the entrance. I knew she was intrigued. By then, I'd grown somewhat adept at reading her thoughts, so I blurted out, "Would you like to watch?" The moment the words left my mouth, I realized my mistake. What I should have said was, "If Madame wishes to see the performance, perhaps we could go in together?" Judging by Zhu Jinmiao's reaction, I'd indeed said the wrong thing. She shook her head so vigorously the jeweled hairpins rattled. "Thank you for your concern, my lord, but you've misunderstood." I closed my eyes briefly. "I'm the one who wants to see it. Let's go inside." From that moment on, she always kept an eye out for the troupe's movements. "The troupe you love most is performing again. Shall we reserve the south-facing private room again?" I fought back a smile and waved my hand. "Reserve it. Reserve it." After Zhu Jinmiao became the duchess, she grew rather amusing. To establish her authority in public, she no longer feared me as much. Sometimes, she even dared to exchange sharp words with me. One morning, a maid accidentally broke 2 of her newly cultivated crabapple blossoms. Thinking it was my doing, she stormed over to confront me. It's not the first time my husband has accidentally picked my flowers. If he truly wants them, next time he must ask me first. It was the first time I'd heard her speak in such a tone, and it felt quite novel. Just as I was about to say something, the maid beside her admitted her mistake. And so, the bristling Zhu Jinmiao instantly transformed back into the cautious Zhu Jinmiao. She chased after me to apologize, promising to treat me to plays from now on. A bitter taste filled my heart, and I felt little inclination to engage with her. Yet if pressed to name her fault, I found none. I was truly suffocating myself. Why? Why did Zhu Jinmiao treat me with such excessive politeness? It wasn't until that day that I suddenly realized. Perhaps Zhu Jinmiao and I could only maintain this polite distance. That time, after returning from Wangchuan Tower, she locked herself in her room, grieving for a long while. Her maid said someone had brought up the incident years ago, how she'd fallen into the water and extorted a marriage. I took men to discipline and warn those people. But I didn't go to Zhu Jinmiao. For some reason, I wanted her to speak up herself. To tell me she felt wronged, that she was heartbroken. Yet the next day, Zhu Jinmiao appeared before me again, her expression as calm as ever. From that moment on, I understood. Perhaps in her heart, I could never be her pillar of support. That graceful youth standing tall upon the ship was none other than the distinguished and brilliant crown prince of the Dingwu Duke, my former husband, Gu Zhaoang. And she resisted that pain. Slowly, both Zhu Jinmiao and I grew old. She toiled day and night for the Duke's household, aging faster than I. I gave her everything good I could. Yet I couldn't stop the years from etching their mark upon her. On the day Zhu Jinmiao was to depart, Yuer and I stood by her side. Holding her hand, I said, "Jinmiao, you've worked so hard. The Duke's household is blessed to have had you." Truthfully, I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell her that lately, I often dream of our newlywed days. Back then, she wasn't as formidable as she is now, she'd even get lost within the Duke's residence. I also wanted to tell her how much better it would have been if she'd lived just one more year. Next year would have been her 80th birthday. I'd planned to go to the palace and invite the Empress Dowager to preside over a grand banquet. And then... never mind. Saying these things now would serve no purpose. Some words, once their moment passes, can never be spoken again. That's always been my way with Zhu Jinmiao. I sat quietly by her bedside. After a long hesitation, I added one more sentence, "Meeting you has been my good fortune." But when I looked up at the figure on the bed, her eyes were already closed. I don't know if she heard my words. The end.